Two moons shone softly over the shining cities of Kepler 442b. Elder Zephi stood high up in the main tower, watching his people move through their evening routines. The Thylorans glided gracefully along the clear walkways connecting their magnificent towers. Their skin glowed with gentle blue designs that revealed their feelings. Tonight, those designs showed peace and calm. Zephi had guided his people for 47 cycles. He'd witnessed conflicts between other species, but the Thylorans always remained neutral. They were merchants and creators, not fighters. Their machines focused on wonder and balance instead of violence. The shining cities could repair themselves when broken, and their vessels could journey between stars, but they had no war fleet. The old leader touched the polished wall next to him. The crystal answered his touch, displaying information from around their planet. 3 million Thylorans lived in 12 major cities. Trading vessels brought items from 6 different alien races. Museums displayed creations that took decades to finish. Learning centers taught young Thylorans about the marvels of space. Everything shifted in one instant. The sky above their main city suddenly filled with enormous vessels. They were dark and sharp-edged, nothing like the smooth curves of peaceful ships. These vessels were made for one thing only: combat. Crimson lights throbbed along their sides like furious pulses. Zephi felt his skin designs change to dark purple, the shade of terror. He knew these vessels from warning reports. The Karash had discovered them. The message system sparked to life. A rough voice spoke in the standard galactic tongue. "Listen, residents of this planet. You now belong to the Korgamonu. Give up now or be destroyed. You have one day to obey." The voice came from Commander Vextul. Though Zephi didn't know this yet, what he did know was that the Corfac were dreaded throughout space. They captured planets and enslaved whole races. Their bug-like forms were wrapped in tough armor that could block most attacks. They moved quickly and thought even quicker. They showed no compassion. Fear swept through the shining cities. Thylorans had no knowledge of combat. They had no forces, no arms, no battle strategies. Their peacekeepers carried stun tools meant to calm upset residents, not battle-trained warriors. The first Corfac landing craft fell like dark rainfall. They targeted the smaller cities first, locations with fewer people to push back. The crystal structures, so gorgeous in peacetime, became traps during conflict. The see-through walls that welcomed sunlight also let the Thylorans watch the nightmare approaching. Zephi called an urgent gathering of the Elder Council. 12 leaders assembled in the grand hall, their skin designs shifting between terror and resolve. Some wanted to surrender right away to protect lives. Others believed they could bargain. A few mentioned fighting, though nobody understood how. "We need to contact our friends," said Elder Morak, her voice shaking. "The Altarian Federation promised to defend peaceful planets." "The synthesized collective has powerful arms," added Elder Kephenol. "They could beat the Corfac without trouble." Zephi shook his head with sorrow. He'd lived long enough to grasp galactic power games. "The other races won't risk battle with the core for our sake. We're too small, too vulnerable. They'll express sadness and offer nothing else." As if proving his words, reports arrived from the first attacked cities. The Corfac's warriors moved through streets in organized squads. They seized Thylorans and loaded them onto transport craft. Families were split apart. The young and healthy were taken first. The elderly and frail were left behind with hardly enough provisions to live. Elder Vashkol, the youngest council member, spoke up. "Then we resist alone. Our forebears constructed these cities. We won't surrender them without attempting something." "With what tools?" Zephi asked softly. "Our digging equipment, our cargo vessels. The Corfac wear protection that can block energy shots. Their arms can slice through our crystal walls like they're made of mist." The reality was harsh but obvious. The Thylorans were artists and thinkers, not soldiers. Their machines were built for building, not breaking. Even their vessels had no arms beyond simple protective barriers. As the council argued more, cities collapsed. The Corfac moved with practiced skill. They'd done this countless times on hundreds of planets. They knew precisely how to crush the hope of a peaceful race. By the end of that first day, half the Thylorian cities were under Corfac rule. Families who'd lived in peace for generations were ripped apart. Young ones wept for parents they'd never see again. The crystal structures still stood tall, but their brightness had faded. Zephi made a bold choice. Deep under the main city sat the strongest message system the Thylorans had ever constructed. It could transmit signals across enormous distances, touching every section of explored territory. The Elders had built it to reach far colonies and trading contacts. Now it would serve a new purpose. Working through darkness, Thylorian technicians adjusted the system to send on every channel. The signal would go everywhere simultaneously, touching every race in space, whether they cared to listen or not. Sci-Fi stood before the sending machine as morning broke over his falling planet. His skin designs had changed to the deep blue of great sadness. Around him, the noise of fighting grew nearer. Corfac troops were advancing toward the capital. He powered the system and addressed the stars. "This is Elder Sci-Fi of the Thylorian race on Kepler 442b. We're being attacked by the Corfac Manny. Our cities are collapsing. Our families are being torn apart. We have no arms to stop them. We're a peaceful race who've never hurt anyone. We're asking for assistance from whoever hears this signal. Please, if there's fairness in space, if there's kindness among the stars, aid us. We can't make it alone." The signal traveled through space, moving faster than light to touch distant planets. It would take time for answers to return, if they came at all. Sci-Fi shut off the machine and gazed out at his city. Corfac vessels circled overhead like metal scavengers. The gorgeous crystal spires that had taken ages to grow might be rubble by sunrise. He gathered the surviving council members and started organizing their escape to secret caves under the peaks. They'd try to rescue whoever they could and wait for rescue that might never arrive. The Thylorans were learning the cruelest lesson in space. Being good doesn't make you powerful, and being gentle doesn't make you protected. Lieutenant Commander Jake Martinez was having his morning drink when the emergency signal arrived. He sat in the message room of Haven Point, a modest space station circling a dead star in the outer edge. The station was nothing fancy, just metal chambers and hallways housing 50 humans whose task was to monitor space and share what they discovered. Jake had been doing this work for 3 years. Most shifts were dull. They heard trader talk, flight signals, and occasional pirate chatter. Space was a crowded place, but most of that activity happened far from Haven Point. The Thylorian signal was unique. It sliced through the regular noise like a yell in a silent chamber. The computer began saving it automatically as the message played through the audio system. Jake heard Elder Sci-Fi's words and felt something icy grow in his belly. He'd heard emergency calls before, but this wasn't a vessel in danger or an accident at a mine. This was a whole planet perishing. He stored the recording and rushed it straight to Captain Lisa Harper. She sat in her quarters reviewing supply lists and trying to stretch their tight budget another month. Earth didn't provide much funding to outer edge stations. "Captain, you must listen to this," Jake said, setting the data device on her workspace. Lisa was a hands-on woman who'd climbed up from the engine bays of cargo vessels. She had trimmed gray hair and palms that were still marked from years of repairing equipment. She heard the Thylorian signal twice without talking. "How distant is this world?" she finally asked. "Around 6 light years away. 3 days' journey if we pushed our quickest vessel hard." Lisa leaned back in her seat. "And who are these, Corfac?" Jake had already researched that. "Terrible information, Captain. They've captured 47 planets in the past 50 years. They exploit forced workers to construct their war equipment. Once they claim a world, the native race typically vanishes within 10 years. What about the big powers? Surely someone will answer this." Jake shook his head. "I've been watching messages since the signal broadcast. The Altarian Federation is organizing committee discussions. The synthesized collective claims helping would be wasteful. The Dromori Empire thinks the Thylorans too weak to merit saving." Lisa stood and walked to the tiny window overlooking the stars. "So everyone just observes while a whole race gets erased. That's how galactic power works, Captain. Nobody wants to begin conflict with the Cortac over a race they hardly recognize." Captain Harper stayed quiet for a long while. Jake knew she was considering Earth's standing in space. Humanity was fresh here, barely a century since initial contact. They had modest vessels, basic machines, and only several dozen settlements. Earth Command's stated rule was to stay out of alien wars. "Get me a link to Earth Command," Lisa said at last. The talk with Admiral Pete Collins went precisely as Jake predicted. The Admiral's image showed on the display, and his look grew more grave as he heard the report. Captain Harper, I grasp your worry, but we can't gamble human lives for aliens we've never encountered. The Corfac have craft that could wipe out our whole fleet. We have families to shield and settlements to guard. Sir, this is mass murder. We're discussing 3 million innocent beings, and I'm discussing 3 billion humans who'd be threatened if we anger the Corfac. The response is negative, Captain. We won't get involved. The link ended, leaving Lisa staring at an empty display. Jake waited for her commands, but she appeared deep in consideration. Captain, he asked gently, tell me about our vessel options. What do we own that could create a change? Jake was taken aback by the question. Well, we have the UES Thunderhawk. She's our quickest scout craft. Strong barriers, reasonable arms for her weight. But, Captain, one vessel against an invasion force. I'm not discussing battling their entire force. I'm discussing creating a change. What else do we own? Before Jake could respond, Chief Engineer Sam Rodriguez entered the quarters. Sam was a broad man with rough palms and grease under his nails. He'd been monitoring the Thylorian signal on the vessel message system. Captain, my ancestors came from El Salvador, Sam said without greeting. My elders shared stories about when dangerous people arrived at their town. They hoped for someone to rescue them. Nobody arrived. I won't allow that to happen again if I can prevent it. Dr. Amy Foster showed up in the entrance behind Sam. She was the station's specialist on alien societies, a petite woman with keen eyes who knew 12 different tongues. I've researched Thylorans for years. They're truly gentle beings. They've never begun a conflict or captured anyone. They don't merit this. Navigator Ben Clark entered the gathering. Ben was a former service flyer who'd worked in the Martian Defense Force before joining the Scout program. Captain, I understand what it's like to be outnumbered and outmatched. Sometimes you must attempt anyway, or you cease being who you are. Lisa observed her senior crew. These were decent people who'd chosen a risky assignment in empty territory because they believed in shielding others. Earth Command might have refused, but Earth Command was distant. If we did this, it would be without permission. We could face military trial. Our jobs would be finished. Ma'am, Jake said, some things matter more than jobs. Lisa approached her secure storage and retrieved the sealed instructions containing their crisis rules. As the highest Earth service officer in this area, she had particular emergency powers in dire situations. I'm permitting a scouting operation to Kepler 442b. We must evaluate the conditions and see if small involvement is workable. The crew will be volunteers exclusively. Sam smiled. When do we depart? 2 hours. Jake, you're operation leader. Sam, I want the Thunderhawk prepared for long missions. Amy, gather cultural study files on both races. Ben, chart us the quickest route that dodges major travel paths. As her crew rushed to organize, Lisa settled back at her workspace. She understood she was likely finishing her job, but some choices were bigger than obeying commands. 3 hours afterward, the UES Thunderhawk departed Haven Point and flew toward a battle area. None of the crew realized they were about to alter galactic events forever. Space was learning that humanity didn't always obey the regulations. The UES Thunderhawk emerged from hyperspace at the boundary of the Kepler 442 system. Jake Martinez stood on the control deck observing the battle display showing what they confronted. His spirits dropped as the figures showed on the monitor. 12 Corfac battleships in orbit, Ben Clark announced from the flight station. Each one is 3 times our vessel's size. I'm also detecting 40 smaller craft guarding the system. Sam Rodriguez examined his technical displays. Their power readings are huge, Commander. Those vessels could destroy us with one blast. Jake examined the enemy arrangement. The Corfac had placed their vessels to dominate all territory around the world. Nothing could enter or exit without their approval. On the world's surface, he could observe the glow of blazing cities. Amy, are you detecting any Thylorian messages? He asked. Dr. Amy Foster operated at her station, attempting to sort through the electronic chaos. I'm receiving bits. Most of their message systems have been wrecked. Wait, I believe I have something. A faint voice arrived through the speakers talking in the musical tongue of the Thylorans. Amy rapidly translated. It's a resistance squad hiding in the peaks. They're asking if anyone can detect them. Jake made a choice that would alter everything. Open a channel. Let them know rescue has come. Amy spoke cautiously in the Thylorian tongue. After some minutes, she received a reply. Commander, I'm in contact with Elder Zephi. He's living but barely. Most of his race are in prison camps or gone. He wants to know who we are. Tell him we're humans from Earth. Tell him we arrived because we heard his signal." There was a long gap before Zephi replied. Amy translated his words. He claims he's never learned of humans before. He asks why we'd gamble our lives for strangers. Jake considered how to reply. Tell him that where we're from. Assisting others is what defines us human. While Amy built better contact with the survivors, Ben Clark examined the Corfac guard routes. The enemy vessels moved in expected paths around the world. They were assured and sloppy because nobody had ever opposed them here. "Commander, I believe I can bring us to the world's surface without being spotted." Ben said the Corfac aren't monitoring the wreckage field near the fourth moon. "If we go silent and float with the rocks, we might slip through." Jake agreed. "Do it, Sam. I want the vessel prepared for anything. Reduce all extra power and get ready for silent operation." The Thunderhawk moved cautiously through the wreckage field. The vessel was made for discovery, not combat. But it had benefits the Corfac didn't anticipate. Earth vessels were constructed to manage the risky conditions of human territory where asteroids and energy storms were regular dangers. As they neared the world, Amy kept speaking with the Thylorian survivors. She discovered the Corfac methods, their arms, and their flaws. Most importantly, she found that the Thylorians had constructed their cities using advanced crystal machines that could become arms if someone understood how. "The crystals can concentrate and boost power," Amy told Jake. "The Thylorians never employed them for combat, but Sam might be able to adjust them." Sam Rodriguez was already examining the technical information Amy had collected. "This is amazing machinery. These crystals could change a basic laser into something that could pierce through Corfac. Protection." The Thunderhawk touched down in a concealed valley where Elder Zephi and 50 other survivors were sheltering. Jake and his squad met the Thylorian leader in a cavern that sparkled with natural crystals. Zephi was elderly and exhausted, but his eyes still contained wisdom and hope. When he observed the humans, his skin designs changed to shades that Amy identified. "As wonder and thanks, you arrived," he said in rough English. "Space ignored our plea, but you arrived." Jake grasped the elder's webbed palm. "We're here to assist. Share everything you know about the Corfac." Zephi described how the takeover had happened. The Corfac had seized most of the Thylorian population in the first week. They were constructing work camps and making the captives extract rare crystals from deep below. The Corfac commander Vexthul had built his base in the main city. "They believe they've succeeded," Zephi said with sorrow. "They don't anticipate any pushback. Then they're about to receive a very nasty shock," Jake answered. Sam Rodriguez collaborated with Thylorian technicians to adjust their crystal machines. They found that human power sources could energize the crystals much quicker than Thylorian systems. Within hours, they'd built weapon systems that could break through Corfac barriers. Amy Foster instructed the survivors on basic guerrilla combat methods that humans had employed throughout their past. Thylorians were gentle, but they were also smart and hopeless. They absorbed quickly. Ben Clark used his flight abilities to chart targets for their initial strikes. He spotted Corfac supply groups, message stations, and separated guard squads that could be hit without causing enormous payback. The first attack arrived at morning light. The Thunderhawk raided a Corfac supply station, while Thylorian resistance warriors used their fresh arms to strike a message tower 50 miles distant. Both strikes succeeded fully. Commander Vexthul got the reports with shock. Someone was resisting, but his scanner revealed no major force in the system. His information officers couldn't recognize the attackers. The second strike arrived 6 hours afterward. This time, the Thunderhawk wrecked 2 guard vessels, while the resistance liberated a cluster of captives from a transport group. Again, the attackers disappeared before backup could come. By the third day, Vexthul was furious and puzzled. The strikes were too planned to be random, but they obeyed no design he knew. The arms being employed were unfamiliar, and the methods made no logic according to Galactic combat rules. Jake and his squad were battling a unique kind of conflict. Where other races obeyed regulations and customs, humans battled to succeed. They employed tricks, shock, and the surroundings itself as tools. The Corfac are like board game players, Amy noticed after examining their reactions. They calculate several moves forward and anticipate their rivals to do likewise. But we're engaged in a totally different contest. Elder Zephi observed the humans operate and started to grasp why they'd succeeded where others collapsed. These unusual beings from a far planet didn't battle for fame or land. They battled because it was proper. Space was learning that sometimes the most dangerous rival is the one who declines to obey the regulations. Information of the strikes on Kepler 442b traveled across space like wildfire. Every race with quantum message equipment detected fragments of the combat reports. The unthinkable was occurring. Someone was battling the Corfac and succeeding. On Earth, Admiral Pete Collins sat in his quarters reading information reports that made no logic. His modest scouting operation had become a full combat mission. The humans on Haven Point had not only dismissed his commands, they were somehow beating one of space's most dreaded combat powers. "Sir, we're receiving messages from every major information network in human territory," his assistant announced. "The account has spread. People want to understand why we're not backing our own troops." Collins massaged his weary eyes. The power situation was becoming messy quickly. Earth's leadership was split. Some authorities wanted to summon the Thunderhawk right away to prevent making rivals. Others were insisting that Earth dispatch more vessels to back what they were naming humanity's first brave position in galactic matters. Dr. Helen Price, Earth's top specialist on alien societies, knocked on his entrance. She walked in without waiting for approval, holding a pile of reports and displaying the resolved look that Collins had learned to respect. "Admiral, we must discuss," she said, sitting across from his workspace. "The whole galaxy is observing. What occurs next? If we leave our people now, we'll never be believed by anyone again. Dr. Price, we have 12 vessels total. The Corfac have hundreds. This isn't about belief. It's about living." "You're mistaken," she answered strongly. "This is precisely about belief. 3 races have already reached us about trading pacts. They want to conduct business with the people who challenged the Corfac. If we retreat now, that chance vanishes forever." Before Collins could reply, Captain Roy Williams walked into the quarters. Roy led the UES Liberty, Earth's biggest battleship. He was a large man with a strong voice and the sort of bearing that made people pay attention when he talked. "Admiral, my crew is prepared to volunteer for a rescue operation. We can have the whole fleet prepared to launch in 8 hours." Collins stared at his top officers. "You want me to dispatch our whole military to assist 4 people battle an invasion force? I want you to dispatch our whole military to demonstrate to space who we are," Roy answered. "Jake Martinez and his squad went out there because it was the proper thing to do. Now we either back them or we show that Earth only thinks about Earth." The argument went on for hours, but Collins knew the choice had been decided. Public feeling on Earth was heavily for assisting the Thylorans. The media was naming Jake Martinez a champion. Young ones were sketching pictures of the Thunderhawk battling alien creatures. "Fine," Collins said finally. "Operation Thunderstrike is approved. Captain Williams, you command the relief force. Bring our people back." On Kepler 442b, Jake Martinez had no clue that assistance was arriving. He was too occupied organizing the next stage of their increasingly risky operation. The Corfac had requested backup, including a fresh commander who focused on tracking rebels. Battle Admiral Corex's fall came with 20 extra vessels and a name for harsh skill. His first move was to kill 50 Thylorian captives as a message to anyone considering pushback. His second move was to start carefully tracking for the strange attackers. "This fresh commander is unique," Amy Foster cautioned Jake as they examined stolen messages. "He's not repeating the same errors as Vexthul. He's creating ambushes and employing superior methods." Sam Rodriguez had been collaborating with Elder HFY to investigate the old ruins under the Crystal Cities. What they discovered altered everything. The Thylorians' forebears had constructed a planetary guard network ages ago. Enormous power arms were concealed in the peaks, fueled by the same crystal machines that constructed their cities. "The arms still function," Sam announced with excitement, "but someone must turn them on personally from the command room. The challenge is that the command room is right under the Corfac base." Elder HFY examined the old diagrams with sad eyes. "My race constructed these arms to guard against creatures from our ocean depths. We never imagined we'd require them against visitors from the stars." Jake understood they'd discovered their opportunity to deliver a final strike. The planetary arms could wreck the Corfac force, but reaching the command room would be nearly unthinkable. It was ringed by hundreds of enemy warriors and shielded by the most advanced security systems the Corfac owned. There might be another method, Sam said after examining the technical details. These systems were constructed to be used by Thylorans, but I believe I can adjust them for distant command. It would be risky and likely unthinkable, but it's superior to a death operation. Amy had been watching Corfac messages and saw something significant. Commander, their force is organizing to depart orbit tomorrow. They're transporting most of the captives to other planets for forced work. If we're going to move, it must be now. That night, Jake made the toughest choice of his existence. They'd try to turn on the old arms while at the same time raiding the Corfac force straight on. It was a strategy that needed flawless timing and amazing fortune. Ben Clark readied the Thunderhawk for what might be their last operation. Commander, I've been studying the Corfac vessel arrangements. If we can generate enough disorder in their guard positions, we might be able to break through to their command vessel. Elder Zephi demanded on guiding the ground squad that would attempt to access the weapon commands. This is our planet, he said plainly. We should be the ones to guard it. As they organized for the raid, Jake got an unexpected signal on an urgent channel. The voice was talking English with an Earth tone. Thunderhawk, this is Captain Roy Williams of the UES Liberty. Earth Force is arriving in the system. Maintain your location. The rescue is arriving. Jake stared at the message panel in shock. Amy, did you detect that? I detected it, Commander. It appears like we're about to have allies. Outside the concealed cave, the first vessels of the Earth Rescue Force started emerging from hyperspace. 12 human craft showed at the boundary of the system, facing a Cormata that exceeded them 3-1. Jake grinned for the first time in days. Sam, Amy, Ben, get prepared. We're about to demonstrate to this galaxy what humans can accomplish when we collaborate. The last conflict was starting, and the destiny of two races hung in uncertainty. Captain Roy Williams stood on the control deck of the UES Liberty as the human force moved toward the Corfac Armada. 12 Earth vessels against 36 alien warships. The numbers were awful, but Roy had discovered something significant during his years in territory. Sometimes being proper mattered more than being powerful. All vessels, this is Liberty. Remember, we're not here to capture anyone. We're here to assist people who can't assist themselves. Make every blast matter. Battle Admiral Corexval observed the nearing human vessels with curiosity. He'd never witnessed craft like these before. They were smaller than real warships, but moved in designs that made no logic. Rather than creating classic combat rows, they separated in 3 dimensions, like they were floating through territory rather than sailing across it. What race are these? He asked his information officer. Unknown, Admiral. Our computers have no information of their vessel patterns or methods. They seem to be basic, but their strategy indicates either insanity or total lack of knowledge of real combat. Corexville clicked his jaws in entertainment. Then we'll teach them rapidly. The conflict started when the Liberty shot the first blast. The huge rail weapon that extended down the middle of the vessel launched a shell at amazing velocity. The Corfac flagship barrier blocked the strike, but just barely. Warnings rang across the enemy control deck as they understood these basic arms hit much stronger than anticipated. Captain Williams planned the raid with Jake Martinez on the world's surface. Thunderhawk, we're starting our strike. Carry out your ground operation now. Jake and his squad were already advancing toward the old weapon command room concealed under the Corfac base. Elder Zephi guided a cluster of Thylorian survivors through passages that hadn't been employed for ages. Sam Rodriguez held the adjusted command tools that might allow them to use the planetary guards from afar. Above them, Ben Clark flew the Thunderhawk through the disorder of orbital conflict. The modest vessel danced between blasts and energy shots, using its weight and velocity to dodge the huge arms attempting to wreck it. The human force battled unlike anything the Corfac had ever witnessed. Earth vessels plunged under enemy arrangements and rose over them. They rotated and rolled and shifted direction in methods that puzzled alien aiming computers. What the Corfac didn't grasp was that humans had learned to battle in the asteroid fields and energy storms of their own solar system. Their methods make no logic. Corexval's combat officer announced they should be keeping arrangement and trading fire at real distances. Rather, they're flying like crazy people. All vessels, focus fire on the biggest human craft, the Admiral commanded. Wreck their flagship and the rest will give up. 6 Corfac cruisers aimed their arms toward the Liberty. The combined firepower should have destroyed the human vessel right away. Rather, Captain Williams had predicted the action. The Liberty plunged toward the world. while shooting its engines backward, making a spiral design that confused the enemy's aim. The focused attack missed, and the Liberty's return shot struck two Corfac vessels at near distance. Human rail weapons broke through alien protection like it was made of tissue. The first Corfac vessels to perish in the conflict burst in bright flashes that illuminated the emptiness of territory. On the world's surface, Jake's squad accessed the command room just as the territory conflict reached its height. The old chamber was filled with crystal arrangements that vibrated with contained power. Elder Defies set his palms on the command surfaces and felt the strength of his forebears flowing through the stone. "The arms are answering," Sam announced as his adjusted tools activated. "I can connect them to our vessel computers, but the power accumulation is huge. Once we begin this, we can't halt it." Through the chamber's crystal walls, they could observe Corfac warriors racing toward their location. Battle Admiral Corexval had discovered where the raid was originating. "Do it now," Jake commanded. Sam turned on the link just as the first Corfac warriors entered the chamber. Old arms that had rested for ages woke across the world. Huge power beams shot from concealed locations in the peaks and struck the Corfac force from underneath. The alien vessels had barriers made to block raids from territory, not from a world's surface. The first beam sliced fully through a core cruiser. The second beam wrecked 3 vessels at once. Within minutes, half of Corexval's force was blazing debris. "Unthinkable," the Admiral whispered as his mighty armada collapsed around him. "No world has arms like this." Ben Clark used the disorder to make his last raid run. The Thunderhawk, filled with every explosive tool Sam could construct, plunged toward the Corfac flagship. Enemy arms shot frantically, but Ben's flight abilities kept the modest vessel living just long enough. He turned on the message system one last time. "This is for everyone who believed rescue would never arrive." The Thunderhawk struck the flagship's control deck at full velocity. The burst that occurred illuminated the whole system and wrecked the command room of the Corfac takeover power. Commander Vextol, now the top surviving officer, stared at the wreckage of his force. More than half his vessels were wrecked or broken. The humans kept raiding with methods he couldn't grasp or stop. The world itself was resisting with arms that shouldn't be real. All vessels escaped to hyperspace. He commanded, "We'll return with backup." But as the living Corfac vessels attempted to run, they discovered their exit paths blocked. Captain Williams had arranged his surviving vessels to block the enemy escape. The Liberty and her companion vessels pounded the running aliens with everything they owned. Only a handful of Corfac craft fled the system. The mighty takeover power that had captured dozens of planets was shattered and dispersed. Elder Defies stood in the old command chamber, observing through crystal displays as the final enemy vessels vanished into hyperspace. His skin designs changed to shades of happiness and wonder that hadn't been witnessed on his planet for generations. "We believed rescue would never arrive," he said gently, until humanity struck like thunder. The saying traveled across space quicker than the information of the conflict itself. Within days, every race in explored territory had learned the account of how humans had journeyed across the stars to rescue strangers they'd never encountered. Trading groups started coming to Earth within weeks. Combat partnerships were proposed by races who'd never talked to humans before. The Thylorans gave their crystal machines freely, starting a partnership that would transform both societies forever. Jake Martinez, elevated to captain after the conflict, built the first human embassy on Kepler 442b. The friendship between Earth and the Crystal Cities became the basis for humanity's growth among the stars. Years afterward, when record keepers examined the conflict that shifted galactic power, they concentrated on the methods and machines that had secured the day. But those who were present knew the reality. Humanity hadn't succeeded because they were stronger or cleverer than their rivals. They'd succeeded because they recalled that sometimes doing the proper thing was more significant than measuring the numbers. In a galaxy filled with races who considered only themselves, humans had shown that there was still space for champions. The age of human growth had started, constructed on bravery, giving, and the plain conviction that nobody should face darkness alone.